You're listening to the Totally Indian Football Show by Humans of Indian Football.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Totally Indian Football Show. Firstly, before I introduce our guest today, I just want to say apologize to all our listeners as we did not release an episode last week due to some certain personal reasons. We couldn't do that, but here we are with episode number 11, and it's a special one because we have a new person on the show. And before that, let me just introduce the veteran who is always there. Arko, welcome to the show.
Hi, not a veteran in years, but good to be called that nonetheless.
In terms of covering the sport, at least, I mean, more than me, I would say. So
That's good to hear. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we also have a very special guest, and I think she needs no introduction. And I'm glad that I finally could get her on the show. Abreshmina is here. She covers football for us, women's ho, men's ho. She keeps us all updated on Twitter. We are again Twitter friends. We've not met, but hopefully soon we can meet. But so happy to have you, Abreshmina, on the show. Welcome.
Hi, Siju. It's my honor to be here as well. Thank you so much for having me.
There is such a formal acknowledgement over there.
I mean, I keep hearing your shows, no? So it's great to be here, actually. Yeah.
Great, fantastic. So we'll kickstart. I mean, we usually the routine that we do is we kickstart with the matches that are gone by. So we just look back at them. We'll definitely, the things we will talk about today is also a bit of women's football as to understand what's happening there, because we are yet to know if IWL will be happening and if the action among women's team is going to happen. So we'll speak about that. But before that, let's look at some ISL and I-League games.
Just to begin the show with some good news, right, this time. So I think AFF released a notification yesterday saying IWL, the second division and the futsal championship are most likely going to be held in a central venue. And the futsal championship is June to July. The second division in a central location in April, May. And the IWL also, I think, sometime around April or May, right? Yeah, so I think we'll take the AFF's word for it. And yeah, good news.
Well, that's really some good news to start the show with. And I think apart from taking the word from AIFF, we have nothing else that we can do. So we'll definitely rely on that. Moving on, let's look back at some of the games in ISL and I-League. The last episode, we were talking about certain games that could be a cracker of matches. But here and there, it wasn't. But I think the highlight of the last whole week would be Hyderabad coming back from being 2-0 down. And that was till the 85th minute. BFC had a lead, but Hyderabad came back to score 2 goals and it ended 2-2. And the other match, I think the talking point was definitely Mumbai City FC versus Northeast United, where the Northeast United under Khalid Jamil has been really been good. And apparently they're the only team to beat Mumbai City this season in both the legs. So Arko, we did speak about the whole new system, the new team under Gerard Noose, but here we see now Noose is gone and Khalid Bhai takes over, as fondly is called, and he's shown his magic.
Yes, more importantly, I am always looking forward to Khalid in the post-match press conference, because that the interviewer is going to have more words than Khalid himself, right? And for those who never sat through a Khalid's press conference, it's quite an experience. But yeah, good to see him back. Good to see a veteran of Indian football, return. And what a turnaround. I mean, from like almost dead and buried, from almost an Odisha-esque circumstance, if I was to say, they've now picked up 10 points in their last 4 matches and they're firmly in the running for top 4, right? And 3rd, 4th and 5th are separated only on goal difference, right? They're all on the same points. Everyone has the same. So Northeast, credit to them. And we always know what we're going to get with the Khalid side, right? We always know that we're going to get a feisty side. You're going to leave it late. Going to at least try and draw the match, if not win them somehow. And as you've seen, they've just swept past sides. And that's for Northeast. Hyderabad, like I keep saying, probably the coach of the season, Manolo Marquez, right? The way he's got his team firing. And most importantly, he's played a lot of matches in which he hasn't played his full quota of foreigners, right? So it's even more impressive. And imagine what would happen if we had actually had a full quota of foreigners. We might have seen them, safely top 4. I mean, for now they are obviously fighting, but the BFC result that you spoke about, right? Hugely impressive, right? I mean, we thought BFC finally going to get that, one win after 10 matches, but the way they came back, both the Spanish strikers scoring for them, like incredible. Like, I mean, and I think that's the kind of spirit that Manoloh's instilled in his team, right? Young Indian players playing fearless football, going for the jugular, more often than not ending on the right side of the result. And I think both Goa and Hyderabad have now gone a significant amount of matches without losing. They're on good unbeaten streaks, both these teams.
Abreshmina, getting you here, how impressed are you with both these teams, right? Even Hyderabad and Northeast, and especially Northeast under the Indian coach. I mean, it's some statement that's putting out, though there's so many people out there to remind these coaches that you guys are interim. You are the interim coaches, especially the Indian ones, whether it's Musa at BFC or whether it's Khalid. And we see great improvement from Northeast, and it's really, I mean, I see it's like a top class performance. They got a win against Mumbai City and then they drew against Goa. So 2 great results for Northeast. And what do you have to say? What are your thoughts on this?
Like Arka also mentioned, I mean, you do expect Khalid Jamil's team to be, fiery and all. And it's compact, if you see them play, they have the shape held really well. But then they know how to use their wings. I mean, Ashutosh also, for the past 3-4 games, he's been really good, And, you kind of expect that because Khalid wants the teams to be compact at the back, not give away too much space, and then see when you can make an opportunity, right? So it's just tactical nuance, and it works when you have players who can hold the ground. Like, for example, I mean, this season, I think everybody has spoken about it. Apuya has been really good in terms of just holding the midfield, right? So when you have players who can do that, it just helps overall. And when I say, like, when you say about Hyderabad, I think they probably this season's neutrals favorite, Everyone just likes seeing them play, possibly also because of the way the Indians are shining in the team. But it's just good to watch them. I think overall, the way they play, the way they go forward, the number of opportunities they create, it's refreshing. It's refreshing. It's actually quite good to watch them play.
Yeah, I think it's quite a blessing in disguise, right? I mean, at least for Indian fans, Indian football fans, to see they did have the reason why we see such a lot of Indian lot playing for Hyderabad FC because some of the injuries niggles among the foreigner signings. But because of that, we could see the entire contingent of Indians playing, and what a sight, exactly like what Abreshmina said, what a sight it has been. It's just a joy to watch them play. And every game, everyone's talking about it or looking forward to these games. So they also had a great result against Chennai, who look quite depleted in the season. Talking about Mumbai City, now Mumbai City have gone back. Now, in fact, I want to speak about Kerala Blasters, Arko, how frustrated would Kibu be? Because they were 2-0 leading against 80KMB and the match ended 3-2 for 80KMB. And then they also lost to Mumbai City 1-2. How, I mean, though we started seeing KBFC play a little better, the team started looking good, but then we have 2 again major losses for them.
Yeah, and like I said, it was a stark contrast from Kibu's usually smiling, soft-spoken nature, after the ATA game, Kibu was furious. I don't think I've ever seen him like that. In the post-match, he was very unhappy. He said, I'm just, the referees have cost me the season. Like, I mean, that's pretty much the outburst that came from him. And it wasn't expected at all because Kibu, like Manoloh's, is one of those guys, who, even if he gets a decision or 2 against him, he's always one to take in the chin and move along. But I think that day, something must have really triggered Kibu because he was absolutely ballistic in the post-match conference. He said, the referee probably cost us points, and it might be coming from a place of frustration also because, like you said, they're 2-0 up. They were skating to a win, and then this happens, right? Then Krishna and company turned it around, and not even a point after. They just lost the game 3-2. So the probability of a team, winning 3-2 after going 2-0 down is less, and it obviously, it's not a pretty sight for the coach or team that's winning 2-0. Having said that, again they lost the next match, and you have to say that they're out of it. They're out of the reckoning. Mathematically, yes, it is possible for them to reach the top four, but you have to now concede that it's going to be really difficult for them. At least I think Kerala, East Bengal, and Odisha, I think, even though they say fight till the last whistle, I have to say that they are pretty much out of it. But for Kerala Blasters, I think the season itself has been one of a building, one of where they're getting to know their own strengths. Recruitment's been on and off. Some foreigners have worked out, some haven't really. Defensively, his two centre backs conceding penalties also is not a great sight for him. But if I was a management, I'd place my faith in Kibu, because I think they've shown that they can build an identity under him. They can play a certain brand of football, and referee is always going to influence results. You can't do anything about it. I mean, one refereeing decision here or there is going to cost your team, but that should not take away from the overall picture that Kerala Blasters have shown a strong sense of identity this season. And given the short preseason, I think there are plenty of mitigating factors for Kibu to be kept on for next season at least. Yeah.
Now, considering how Kerala Blasters has been throughout, right, they've been a team that's consistently been changing coaches because of a bad season. But just like Arko mentioned, or all those who are following ISL this time, and especially Kerala Blasters, are looking forward to probably Kerala Blasters sticking with Kibu. So they are trying to gel well, and probably going ahead in the next season we could see a better side. But Abreshmina, like I said, KBFC, we've seen how quickly they change coaches, and how the management is unhappy. How do you see going ahead from here? Because we've seen him frustrated, which we thought we would never see, and it's back-to-back 2 losses from a very decent playing. What do you see going ahead? Do you see a comeback from here, even if it's mathematically, or for the long run? Would you say that KBFC will keep him?
I don't see a comeback for sure. I think it's really difficult for them this season. But like Arko mentioned, even I feel, throughout the season, it's not like Kerala have played badly or something. They're just moments, like Kibu also himself says, that they just switched off. And I don't think it has much to do with, say, a change of substitution or anything like change of tactics or anything. It's just more about the players on the pitch, and I think it's the effect of the losses. Like the other day Sunil Shetty also said, you just kind of get in the habit of losing, right? So it's just sort of that mentality. They've drawn or lost so many games despite playing well, is what I think Kibu mentioned also after the previous game, that it's frustrating when you play well but you either are drawing or losing games. So I think it has more to do with that. I don't think they'll change coaches. I certainly hope they don't, because they've shown promise under Kibu, and I think given some time, he can really do well in terms of putting the team forward. But you never know with Kerala Blasters, to be honest. But I still think that they'll stick with Kibu, because I don't think the team has been bad overall. It's just a few things right now that are not working for them at all.
Okay, you mentioned about Sunil Shetty talking about how losing isn't when it can't be a good habit, and we've seen Bengaluru FC winning. That's all out there, right? Every time they get on the pitch, and we know for the fact that they're a team or a club with some great mentality. So they still looked like they would end their winless streak against Hyderabad, but then we saw what happened there. But finally, I think they got their first win in 8 matches, and Gurpreet kept a clean sheet in probably 11 games against East Bengal. Abreshmina, I'll ask you about this impressive run for BFC, or do you still see them they still have a long way to fight to stay in?
I think they still have to fight to stay in. I mean, that can be said also from their previous game against Chennai. Against East Bengal, I mean, we know for a fact that East Bengal miss way too many chances. And yes, that particular day, perhaps BFC were able to contain their forwards really well, in the sense that there was hardly any penetration from East Bengal. They had most of the ball. They were getting the ball forward, but in the final third there was nothing at all. So that is why I still feel like BFC have a long way to go. Because it was against East Bengal that are known to be missing chances, and that have been actually, the team has been guilty of not creating enough in the final third, despite having a lot of possession. So yeah, I mean, I think BFC will still, like, there'll be some time when for them to get back to where they were, which can also be, I mean, yesterday even against Chennai, the match, if you see, Chennai also missed a lot of chances. That is something that Shahbaz Azlo has also been really frustrated about. They missed a lot of chances. They just didn't score, despite having some 19 shots. So yeah, I mean, it's not like BFC are back to their best, but yeah, maybe you can say that they are on their way, or they might just get back towards it. But yeah, it's difficult still.
Arko, your thoughts on BFC? Probably in brief, if you had to add on, what do you see? Last time I remember Sandeep mentioning that a lot is dependent on how other teams perform for BFC to probably make it to the top 4. Is it still the same?
I don't think BFC are, like I've been saying, for the fans of BFC, they're not very far off. They're still only 3 points off, but they have played one game more than the teams, in front of them. So yeah, we don't know actually. The cutoff, is reducing with every day. What I mean by that is that previously for an 18-game season, we'd say the cutoff, the magic number was about 30, right? You get 30 points, you win the top 4. This season, because of the extraordinary huge number of draws, I feel the cutoff might come even at, even though with 2 extra games, it might come off at 28, 29. So if you look at it, they're not very far off, right? But should Hyderabad, Northeast or Goa, either any of these teams start winning games, right? Even one win, and BFC will be 6 points behind the top 4, right? So yeah, I mean, nowhere close to where they would have wanted to be. But that one win, at least, what it did is it helped, turn the tide around, right? And now they're unbeaten in 4, 3 draws, but they'll take it, I think. I think BFC, when probably the release quadra, they probably have expected, that we'd finish in a respectable place. And having said that, I think top 4 will be a bonus for the management. I think they'll take it happily if they do finish top 4.
Yeah, and that's something we have to wait and watch. Now, that brings us probably to the end of discussion about the ISL games that we are looking back. Now, we had some interesting I-League outings. I think every week, I'll have to say, add this word interesting or some crazy games, because I-League since the start, like every season has been really good. And this time I would say probably Aizawl FC have finally got a win. And we all will be happy about it. They got a win against Neroka FC 2-1 and a great result against Churchill Brothers as well. It's a draw. While Chennai City got a win against Indian Arrows, like Sandeep mentioned last time, probably a chance for them to get back. But this is the scoreline I want to talk about. Abreshmina, Chennai City were thrashed 4-0 by Sudeva. What went wrong there for Chennai City? Or rather, let's put the light on Sudeva. Probably they deserve it because they deserve it. It was a 4-0 scoreline.
Yeah, I definitely thought they played well that day. Chennai obviously gave them a lot of space to do that. And probably Sudeva should have actually scored a couple of goals more. But yes, they played well. They passed the ball around well. They got into really good spaces. But it was also that the Chennai City backline was wide open. Their sense of positioning was just not there. They were very easily falling apart. So obviously that helped Sudeva as well. Nothing actually worked for them. They hardly had any chances. They didn't have control of the game at all, which is what really helped Sudeva. I mean, they had ample chances to, sit back, see where the positions are, see where their forwards are moving, and just make a good pass and try and get it forward. So it was kind of facilitating Sudeva's game. So yeah, I mean, Naucha could have got 4 goals himself. He got 2, but he could have actually got 4. So yeah, I mean, Chennai City's defense was wide open, easily exploitable.
Arko, how big a boost is this for Sudeva Delhi FC, considering they got a win against the top team, former champions, and fielded playing with 11 players, and finally, they're a talking point.
Honestly, Sudeva keep defying the odds, right? They first, after that initial game against Mohammedan, people were quick to, write them off, and they've come back strongly. And that's just down to the fitness regime that is there. You can see them. We see that they're one of the fittest sides. They've been training together for about 2 months now. They've been putting in a lot of work, and it's very high intensity that they play. It doesn't always come off, but when it comes off, like against Chennai City, I mean, it can result in a few goals for sure. And I think Sudeva will be really happy. I mean, to be second at this stage of the season, I don't think they would have expected it, And honestly, I think they're defying the odds, right? Having said that, I do not think Chennai City are title contenders this season, right? That also their 4-0 win should also be seen in that perspective, as in Chennai, apart from that first game, have really flattered to deceive. So I really wouldn't go around, hailing Sudeva as, as title contenders yet. But for now, they sit in the top half, right? After round class 1, I think they dropped to 4th. But they sit in the top half. That's where they would have wanted to be. And I think before the season, if you had asked me which, because of the format, right? There are top half side, there are bottom half sides. If you asked me if, the sides that are currently in the top half, would be there, I'd say, I'd probably give you a few names different. Like, I mean, for example, Gokulam's now sitting, at 8th, right? But 2nd to 8th, 10th is only split by 4 points, right? So I definitely say, this race is far from over, right? The race to finish top half or bottom half is far from over. And I think we'll see a few upsets also, like Trau yesterday, right? Trau been so good, they've been unbeaten, but they were swept aside yesterday. So anything can happen. And I think that's why we love this division. We love the unpredictability of this division.
Absolutely. Abreshmina, do you see Gokulam got a great result against Real Kashmir, considering we've put the Kashmir team up there as one of the title contenders, and rightly so, they're sitting in the 2nd position. So it was a goalless draw for Gokulam Kerala FC. Do you see that as a good point won by Gokulam?
Absolutely. I mean, Real Kashmir are doing quite well. I mean, they're second, so obviously they're doing well. So yes, of course, it was a very good point for Gokulam. They obviously also they have a chance, like Arka said. They are at their 7 points, which is not far from Real Kashmir. Real Kashmir are at 9 and Gokulam are at 7. So obviously it was a great point. It was Real Kashmir would probably consider it as a miss for sure. Gokulam would be happy that they got a draw against Real Kashmir. So yeah, they obviously have a chance. I mean, they're 8th right now. But like Arka said, I mean, I-League has always been unpredictable, right? So you never know how much the table changes. So yes, it was actually a great point for Gokulam.
Now I'm going to stick with you, Abreshmina. Real Kashmir also kind of thrashed Indian Arrows 6-0, right? I think it would probably, I shouldn't be using the word thrashed considering the young guns playing for Indian Arrows. Now, we also had a question raised to some of us, and this person also tagged it. So I have Manju on Twitter asking us how hard this is going to be on these boys, because I think this is something we've always spoken about since the time Indian Arrows are back in the I-League, and we know they're not a full, they don't have much seniors, or there's a lack of experience. But Abreshmina, as a coach, how do you get or pump young bunch of boys from this loss?
It's definitely difficult. This season particularly has been really hard for this batch. They've hardly got any results going. They probably have like one draw that they had against ISL, which was encouraging, to be very honest. I mean, ISL have been good this season and they got a draw against them. So that was a good result. But obviously, the thrashing from Real Kashmir was harsh. It was quite hard actually for them because 6-0. I mean, that's like we were talking about Chennai City getting thrashed by Sudeva, right? Like 4-0. And it's much more difficult for Indian Arrows, obviously. So in case, I mean, about getting pumped, obviously it's tough. But then all you've got to tell these boys is probably this is the experience you get. You probably get the experience of loss as well. And then it is now up to your character, right? To just get out and give it your heart in the next game and try and get a good results for yourself. It's all about character now. After this loss, how worse can it get, right? It's not going to get any worse. So just go out there and play your game, not be scared. So I think that's it. That maybe just tell that it's got to your character now. Like just go on the field and show your character. That's all you can tell them. It's been hard actually. The season overall has been really hard on them.
Arka, do you think that probably there should be they should have a mix of senior players in the squad of Indian Arrows? We do know the whole project of that and the whole thing behind it, but do you see there should be some kind of senior or experienced players in the squad playing alongside these young boys?
First of all, we have to define what the objective of the Arrows is, right? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's to develop young players, right? It is not, let's say, to win, right? The aim, I think it is participation. But having said that, football is a results business and the I-League is a professional division. It's not a reserves league or a, youth league. It's the senior division. So I'm expecting that, these boys will be toughened by this experience. Maybe, what do you say? Maybe they'll be sharpened by it. Maybe they'll come back, stronger. It's not the job the Arrowsmiths, let's say. I know it's a weird thing to say, but I don't think it's their job to win, right? It's their job to develop as footballers, right? To get the best, get the best experience and and know-how they can, and then organically make their way up to, let's say, other outfits, right? And when you talk about senior footballers who may not be getting game time, the solution to that is basically a reserves league or an under 23 league, right? Now, these 22 sides that are there, 11 I-League and 11 ISL, should really think about starting an under 23 league or an under 20 league, right? I think they had spoken about it. There have been a few articles also about the same. But honestly, the Arrows project is there because currently not a lot of people guys in this age group are getting exposure, right? And this is why these 23 guys who are all 2003-4 born, they're going to play because normally, it might be difficult for them to play at ISL sides or I-League sides. Just take a look at the Reliance boys who've gone there. None of them have even made any squads this year. So that should tell you how tough it is to for a player who's between 16 and 20 to break through, right? So the whole systematic issue that the Arrows seeks to solve might get solved if teams play an under 23 competition, or the likes of what Kibu was doing when he was playing his reserves against the same team that they had faced the previous match, their reserves against the opponent's reserves, right? So something has to be done to address the lack of game time between 16 to 21-22, right? But definitely do not dilute. I would not say dilute the Arrows project with senior boys. That's not something I would recommend.
Yeah, Abreshmina, I think the one point that Arka mentioned, I think we wanted to speak about this and glad he brought this up, or rather reminded me to take it up. The whole thing of KBFC starting that, Kibu played his reserves against the opponent's reserve. And I think it's important, right? Because not everyone is going to get a chance to play in the top, in the first 11 or in the first team. So how do you see going ahead? This probably can be a path put forward so that the federations or whoever conducts the tournament can look for it and probably make it happen. And like Arko mentioned, probably Indian Arrows can then play in that category, and more competitions means more matches, and that means more game time. So which is very important and lacking at the moment for Indian football.
No, absolutely. I think what Kibu showed was how team selection overall can probably also be made to be more objective, because you see some of your reserve players also in action, and it just makes it easy for you as a coach to decide who you want to play, as your first 11, or everybody you want to have on bench as well. So yes, Kibu definitely showed that how these games can be very helpful even during the season. But yes, like Orko mentioned, I think game time is the biggest problem in our country. I mean, even as senior footballers, the guys have really less game time. So surely having an under-23 league and all will be really helpful to these kids, because they'll at least have adequate game time. They'll get competitive games. Like Orko mentioned, I mean, obviously, Indian Arrows at this point of time, he's right. I mean, it's probably not about winning absolutely. It's more about development. So if you say put the guys of these age groups in a competitive environment where they're playing against their age, it probably would be helpful for all of them, in terms of competitiveness also and in terms of development also. So yes, I do agree with Orko when it comes to the fact that, yeah, I mean, the youth leagues are important. You need to have that also in order to give them game time. And yes, I mean, Kibu did show that doing these reserve games could be really helpful, even though I'm not sure anybody else picked it up. But I mean, they did play with Kerala Blasters at some point. So yeah.
Now let's move to the other part of the football where, I think as compared to the men's side, they are the ones who are most affected in terms of game time. Talking about our women's players, our women footballers, be it clubs or be it even the national team. Now to start talking about this, I like to ask Abreshmina. We had an update of women's team joining a camp in the national team joining the camp in Goa in the month of December. Any updates from that? Are they still in the camp or what's happening?
No, they're all still in the camp. They would probably have an exposure tour to Turkey in mid-February, which is perhaps what they're preparing for. But yeah, they're all still in Goa training.
And how do you see going ahead? I mean, exposure tours, we know how it is, but don't we think I think finally when we have I think next year we'll have two big tournaments hosted by India, and that's the AFC Women's Asia Cup, which is again the senior division, and then we have the Under-17 Women's World Cup, which has been postponed because of the pandemic, and it's, again, both these big tournaments are happening the same year. Is it finally time that we as a country, or we as as football federation, time to look at the women's football and not a 14-day tournament or a festival kind of a sort, but a proper league or a proper tournament, and which is possible. I don't think it's impossible. So what do you think should push the AIFF or the tournament organizers to finally give attention to the women's football leagues?
See, they at least want to say or show that they are paying attention because they are hosting these tournaments. So, but then, like you said, it just comes down to what is actually being done for these footballers, right? Like you rightly mentioned, I mean, it's sort of a festival. It's a tournament. You can't call it, we call it Indian Women's League, but it's not technically a league. I mean, the previous IWL, which happened in the Bangalore one, was like 24 days? That you can't call that a league. That's not enough game time for anyone. You have national championships, which runs less than a month. You have the IWL, which runs for 18 to 24 days. It's not enough game time for anyone, and that's just senior footballers. And you're hosting your Under-17 Women's World Cup. But how much have these girls actually played? And, I mean in competitive environment, because when they go in the World Cup and play, it's going to be really competitive. So there's just not enough competitiveness, enough exposure, enough anything for these women, right? They need more games, and for that, a proper league is of utmost importance. At least if you have a proper league, these women will have, round the year employment. These women will have something to play for round the year. That if, I have a league for like at least like 5-6 months, I have to prepare for that. I have to keep myself fit. I have to do this. I have to do that. Even the clubs will be more, because if they'll be functioning for a longer period of time, they will also feel like they would get something out of that investment. Right now, there's no calendar. There is the clubs are working for a very short period of time, so there's hardly any return. It's just not enough for people to invest in the game. You've got to create an environment where people want to invest in the game.
Arka, for someone who's been probably, I wouldn't say somebody who's following women's football, but I think I wouldn't be wrong to say this, that you're the one probably started talking about or having this conversation and writing while you were a journalist, while you were full-time reporting on women's football and women's football development rather. What is stopping us from conducting a proper league instead of a 14-day affair or a 18-day, or like Abreshmina said, the last one was for 24 days?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, you were one of the first ones to start covering, because that itself shows that when I came, right, when I started doing this, I endured a bit of, a bit of ribbing, a bit of joking, a bit of saying, why are you covering this? Why are you covering the women's game, right? And my answer was simple. As a journalist, you should always seek to cover stories that others aren't covering. At that point of time, the women's game hadn't got the traction, hadn't got any this thing, and nobody was covering it seriously at that point in time. And even today, right, we're still getting stories, when 90% of women's football stories are she came from a very small village and she had to eat ants for breakfast. These are the stories that are still coming out, right? We are still going with the same narrative that that we're used to seeing in men's football a long time ago, right? Not anymore. So the whole situation about women's football changes if people wake up and realize what the gap is. The gap right now is game time, 100%. That's the gap, right? So for that, I think everyone has to be vigilant. Everyone has to make a strong point saying, listen, they're not playing enough games, right? And it's true. Like the IWL, if you're out in the group stage, you're playing 5 games, 6 games. Going to national championship, you're playing a maximum of 6 games if you make it to the final. If you're not making it, if you're on in the group stage, you're playing 3 games. So you're saying India's women's footballers, senior, they're playing 6 plus 3, 9 games. Is that even remotely close to enough? It's not, right? It's not. But for that, I think everyone has to change their narrative today. Everyone has to change what they're talking about. Like women's football can't be a Mamta exercise anymore, right? These are what in the journalism profession you would call Mamta stories, like she came from nowhere and suddenly she's playing for women's, she's playing at the senior level. Yes, she's playing at the senior level, but imagine how many more people could have been playing how many more games, right? We were vigilant. So it all comes down to the culture. What is the culture of coverage? What is the culture of women's football? How are we tackling it? How are we looking at it? How seriously are we taking it, right? For us to take women's football seriously, we have to start dissecting women's football like we start by, like we dissect men's football today. Like we've seen in the ISL, we've seen that a lot of people have started analysis, and a lot of casual fans in the men's game offer their opinion saying, like India may not be at that level, but this is what we can do, right? So that sort of vigilance has to come into the women's game now for us to, let's say, to be, to fill the gaps that are currently there, right? And game time, for sure, game time. And I also understand because, right now there are no sponsors that flock to the league or the teams who are starting a women's team. It might be difficult to hold longer leagues, right? In that case, the only solution is to have like longer state leagues, right? Have longer leagues locally. At least let these girls play, I would say, a minimum of 25 to 30 matches, but our senior men don't play that much, so I don't know. So it might be difficult to have that.
Great. I mean, the gaps, as you mentioned, but Abreshmina, how much of a boost, probably, if it is so, that Bala Devi is now playing for Rangers, and quite rightly so, she's performing as well. She's got some goals under her belt too. Do you see that should probably start boosting all of us to talk about women's football? To be honest, I don't watch. I haven't watched. When there are games, I do whenever there is available. But is there still no thorough interest, or not interest, I would say, probably something that still missing from my end to probably follow, or to be honest, to follow the game, or to know the updates. But how can we fix these things? And I know for certain things are not just we doing it, but all of us who are part of the industry have to play their part. But as I mentioned, how much of a boost is Bala Devi playing? And the news is now no more national, it's international. Like, people are looking at us. So at least when someone like her is out there playing, so India is being noticed. Don't you think we should probably now pay attention and do our job?
Absolutely. At least with Bala going there, there's at least a conversation, right? Back home and internationally, there's at least a conversation about it. There's at least that, okay, our women footballers do have the quality. I'm not saying everyone has the quality to go outside, but at least they have certain quality. And it's not like the women's game is any less to the men's game, right? I mean, overall, if you watch matches, yes, obviously, in terms of the skill level or something you see, you'd find it less, but that's down to the game time, right? I mean, they hardly play. So if they don't play, how are they going to develop? So it all comes down to that. And yes, there's obviously the conversation has started. So yes, I think it's just about the mentality. You need to push that thought behind that these games are not going to be exciting enough. A few IWL games are also quite exciting. I mean, I don't know how many people actually watched it, but the final, the 2019, right, Ludhiana, when the IWL happened in Ludhiana, the final between Setu and Manipur Police was actually very good to watch. It was a good game. So, it's time we push that thought forward that the women's game is just not good enough, and watch games and try and understand that game more, because it's not exactly the same, but it's the same sport. So yeah, I mean, if you start watching, when you keep watching a certain number of players, you'll obviously find some connect with them, you'll obviously start following them, and then it won't seem out of place. It'll just be your usual football. So yeah, obviously the conversation has started. All of us have got to do it. We've got to write, like Arka mentioned rightly, we've got to write more about the game rather than the stories of people's backgrounds and whatnot. We've got to start talking about the game and objectively. So yeah, that's the need. That's what we can do, at least in in our industry, at least that's what we can do. Get started about the game rather than just like Arko said, Mamta stories. That's true.
Yeah, Arko, come in, please.
Yeah. So, and on the Bala Devi thing, right? And not to be a cynic or not to, disrespect anybody. And I love the fact that, Bala's playing in Europe, right? And that the thing is, the conversation shouldn't turn to, oh, we've made it. We have a woman in Europe. No, that should not be the case, because firstly, it's the Scottish Premier League. Scotland's ranked something, I think, last year they were ranked between 30 to 40. Secondly, one Bala Devi isn't enough, right? There need to be multiple Bala Devis, right? For our football to really grow, right? When Bala plays in India, and we also see it, like, there's such a stark gap between her and the rest, because she's just head and shoulders above everybody, right? She's scoring 25 goals in 6 matches, so you can understand that she is bulldozing the rest of the competition, right? So the conversation has to be good. Bala's giving women's football more traction, but on the flip side, the Scottish League isn't really telecast, right? How many people are watching those games because Bala's there, right? All of these are questions that we'll have to ask, right? When is the next Bala going to go to Europe, right? So for like Indian women's football also to grow, right? A lot more people have to go out. A lot more people have to go play, in these top leagues more regularly, right? And or they need to have more game time at home. I think still Bala is Bala because when she was young, she played a lot of games with the men, right? And she like Bem Bem, they also started practicing with the men. They played so many games that her technical skills were mad developed by the time she came to 14, 15 and she started representing India, right? So that's one. The second thing is, when we talk about women's football, I think Abreshmina also reacted, we have to be more serious, right? We have to take it, objectively. We have to look at where we stand vis-a-vis world football, right? In the last World Cup qualifiers, and I think it was combined with the Asian Championship qualifiers, I think we conceded 25 goals in 4 matches, if I'm not wrong, right? We had a very strong group, to be honest. We faced, I think, North Korea, Australia, and one more very top side, and we considered 25 goals, right? So that is where we stand currently, and till now only I think three nations qualify for the World Cup. So Asia as such is a very tough place for women's football as it is, right? It's one of the hubs, right? You have Japan who won it, you have South Korea, North Korea who are all good, you have Australia who boast one of the best players ever, right? So where are we in terms of really progressing? That's something you have to see. Bangladesh, on the other hand, right, have made it to the finals of the AFC Championship, the final round, the 8-team round of the AFC Under 16 Championship twice in a row on merit, right? That's tangible sign of progress, right? You're seeing them qualifying because that batch of girls is then going to go and form the senior batch later, right? So it's a good sign, right? So we need to start qualifying for the under 16 championships regularly, the final round, the qualifying more regularly to the Women's Asian Cup directly. Obviously, we are playing at home this time, but more regularly, every 4 years we should aim to qualify for the AFC Asian Cup at least, right? Otherwise, one Bala is great in Europe, and I think it's the start of something, because I've always lamented this, that there have been no role models in women's football. I mean, there have been Bem Bem Devi, Bala Devi, but if you ask me, is their stature at the level of a Saina Nehwal or a Mithali Raj or a Sania? It's not. Let's be very frank. And even though I'm really good friends, with both the women, right? I mean, because football is a team sport, because the team is judged by its results, right? Even though there might be one outstanding player, right? The team will always be judged by results, and still the team doesn't start performing, right? Very few people are still going to notice Bala Devi, right? Because of the way it goes, right? Today people know Mithali Raj because the team reached the finals of a World Cup. Today Sania won a Grand Slam, Sindhu's won a World Championship, Saina's won multiple medals. So to be honest, I mean, we live in a tough market, and it's a market where success sells, right? Success is what makes a sport popular, is what makes individual characters popular. Love to get onto the Bala Devi train, but there are bigger things to comprehend right now.
Yeah, I mean, love to get on the Bala Devi train, but we need more people joining in as well. And that's more players, and that's more of us talking about it and starting the conversation and trying to fill those gaps that are there. Now, before we move on from this topic, I just want to ask Abreshmina that we have seen slowly some teams looking forward to having a women's squad or something like that. I mean, Gokulam Kerala FC have kind of setting up their team. We also saw FC Goa put out news that they are looking for girls to come and trial at their club. So we are very slow, but we are probably heading into that direction of developing the sport for the women.
Yeah, sure. And like I said, I mean, it's everyone has to come together for that. The state associations also have to be a bit more serious. When AIFF writes that you were supposed to have at least 4 teams in the state league for it to be held, does not mean you have only 4 teams, right? You can have more than that. 4 is the least. So everyone has got to be a bit serious about it as well. That is how you will have teams also come up and say, okay, fine, this is going to happen every year. This is serious. So we might as well get on board. So state associations also have to contribute. Everything cannot be put on AIFF as well. State associations have got to contribute and be a bit more serious as well. So yeah, we are getting there. So slowly, very slowly, but yes, I mean, there has been progress. Like we've just spoken about, there has been progress and it has to keep going. It cannot stop. It has to keep going and probably pick up some pace.
We also keep making this mistake where we say, it's, oh, more ISL teams need to pick up. Like you said, FC Goa opening a women's team is good news, Siju. It definitely is, right? But why should it be the onus of only ISL teams to do that, right? Why not I-League teams? Why not incentivize, non-ISL I-League teams which are ultimately focused on women's football, right? So today, I know a lot of outfit, just on the top of my head, I was to say, just name a few, right? Setu FC, Eastern Sporting Union, you have Krifsa, you have Rebels who are starting a dedicated girls academy. Abreshmina, you want to chip in with a few more?
Yeah, I think you pretty much mentioned you have Alakpura who are completely like they.
Alakpura. You have Alakpura. You have Manipur Police. You have you have Rising Student from Odisha, right? We also know that Odisha is a really good state for women's football, right? Even though the men's football doesn't have a culture, I mean it has. I mean but there haven't been a lot of players from there. The women's game is completely different, where we see a lot of players coming from. Same thing for Haryana, right? We don't see a lot of players from men's football players from, but we see a lot of culture for women's, right? We see KSFA who want to make their women's division a 2-tier thing. You want to have promotion, relegation, and a tier B, right? So ultimately, reward those teams who are completely focused on women's football, incentivize them, give them something to cling on to. Then you have talk about states which are investing heavily in women's football, right? Which are doing well in women's football. Tamil Nadu, we know, have been threatening Manipur's dominance for a couple of years now, 4 or 5 years now, right? They won the IWL, they won the junior championship, they won the national championships. So yes, include more than just the I-League or ISL teams in this conversation, right? That's the first thing, right? I think someone should go to all of these women's league teams and say, we know you don't have a recognized men's team, but you doing so much for women's football is credit worthy, right? So there has to be someone to pat them on the back and to make sure that these guys who are so passionately invested in women's football get some tangible return out of it, or even an intangible, even a social return is fine, right? But they need to be recognized and they need to be lauded for the work they are doing in this space.
Absolutely. I don't think I can disagree to that. I mean, absolutely bang on to all the points there mentioned by Arka. And I think this is something, even off the record, I had conversation with people who say that, ISL and I-League clubs need to have women's team and there needs to be a rule and mandate. But why? I mean, why are you putting the whole limelight? Or they're anyway, most of the clubs are anyway bleeding. There's no money in there. But when we have clubs, when we have academies or clubs that are investing in the women's football, why not? I think I like the point that said incentivize, give them incentives and, promote them because they already have teams, get them up there. So I think it's something that, like we already mentioned, right? It's something that we all have to come in. We have to finally take this seriously. Yes, the conversation has started and we will have more such conversations on this podcast or the other shows that are available on Indian football, but that's not enough. We have to start talking about the game, and for that we need to see these women in action to talk about the game. And I think the whole comparing part comes into picture when you are actually watching a women's football match with your brain and the eyes that you will watch of men's football. I mean, why do that, right? I mean, the whole point of comparing, even say, is Ronaldo better or Messi better, is because they are playing in the same league and they are playing the same sports. You intentionally, it has to be intentional. You have to sit down and watch a women's football game, knowing that they're women who are playing the sport, nothing less than what men do. Maybe the physicality and the skill set would be different. It would be different, not less nor more, right? It's different. So I think we have to start acknowledging that and start respecting that fact. I think this brings to the end of our discussion on this. But before we close, we have a couple of matches. This show we record on a Saturday. It will come out on a Monday. So we have some games in I-League and ISL that we look forward to. So I think I'll start with ISL. We have two matches. That's Monday and Tuesday that we're looking at. Probably we'll kickstart and resume our recordings and our shows as usual that we did every week. So, Abreshmina, I'm going to come to you. Mumbai is playing Goa on the 8th of Feb in ISL. Now, both these teams, Mumbai City look quite solid on top of the table, but Goa also somewhere falling down, but they have regained their momentum. Your thoughts on this match?
It's going to be tough for Goa. I mean, considering that they gave 2 penalties in the previous game, they're going to have going to have a lot of pressure from Mumbai up front, and they have to, be very solid at the back to, thwart any kind of danger that MCFC put. It's going to be really tough, but I also think that Goa have at least the attack has got better with time, and they are more penetrative now. So yeah, they can score also, but I would probably give it a draw. Yeah.
Yeah, this season has been seen so many draws. Like, so I think that's the safest thing. हाँ ये भी draw, वो भी draw, सब कुछ draw ही होने वाला है.
I think given the kind of defense and attack that both teams have, I think that's particular to why I would give it a draw.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just poking fun because even the last games when I asked these two boys to pick their matches, they were like draw, draw. So I was like, yeah, anyway, these teams. But yeah, definitely looking forward to this game. Yeah, I'm sure I don't know who is going to come as winners because both have had their pitfalls, right? But Arko, I want to ask you to explain on this game, and I'm going to ask you a clear question. And who's your winner from the BFC match versus ATKMB?
I give to ATKMB. Yeah.
Kya baat hai? I thought you'll come up and say another draw, but
no.
Anyway, great, good stuff there. I think we are looking at 3 matches in I-League and 3 games in I-League to look forward to. I have just put some names. Is Mohammedan SC versus Gokulam Kerala FC. Now, both these sides have not very much impressed us this season, but they slowly probably regaining their confidence. But GKFC kind of had a good result against Real Kashmir, but on the same side, Mohammedan SC has also not been. I mean, I thought everybody was looking forward to this team because Black Panthers were back in the I-League after a very long time. But Arko, what are your thoughts on this game?
I mean, again, I'm going to revert to the old. It's difficult to call. Black Panthers have come back, but the results have nowhere been close to what they expected. I think that's because the team was also assembled very hastily, right? But against Gokulam, I think they'll find it tough, right? I think Gokulam have kind of steadied the ship, right? Even though they have lost one, I think it'll be difficult for Mohammedan this game. I see it being edged by Gokulam, this one.
Okay. Well, we have the other game, interesting match, I think, is Churchill versus Real Kashmir. Abreshmina, both these teams, and now this is like at the top of the table clash. Churchill is placed first, Real Kashmir is placed second. Both of them have great outings in their previous game. Real Kashmir super confident after a 6-0 thrash, and Churchill again, they had great. Churchill, I would say, on the other hand, probably should have or could have won, but they both drew against Trau and Aizawl. So do you give an upper hand because of that to a Real Kashmir in this one?
No, I don't think so. I would probably say that Churchill might edge Real Kashmir. I think after the draw, especially against Aizawl, they'd really want to be back into this, and I think Churchill might actually edge Real Kashmir.
Interesting. Now you mentioned about Aizawl. My final game on the list in this game, final game in my list, I would say is Aizawl playing Trau. So So Aizawl are finally showing some good signs. They were definitely a good team, but the conversion was the issue that they've had. But they had some good result in the past two games. So Abreshmina, Trau versus Aizawl, how do you see? Considering Trau also has not been great in the last two encounters.
Yeah, I like Trau have slipped up, yes. But they've also especially the game against Punjab, I think they slipped up. And Aizawl, yes, they've had a draw against Churchill, but then there was a draw against Churchill and they defeated Neroka before that. So I think Aizawl will win this.
Great. The final word from Arko. Aizawl versus Trau.
Difficult to call. This one I'm going for a draw.
Okay, then that's that. Finally, I would like to say thank you so much to both of you guys, especially Abreshmina. I mean, I've been delaying the recording for some days now, and you guys have been really patient and kind to take time and join the show. I really had great fun talking about the different things that we spoke, and hopefully we'll have Abreshmina more often on our show. Thank you so much for joining this one.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
And I think I would take this opportunity probably. I don't know if it would be right to speak about on all of behalf of women journalists or such as such, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank Arko. At least probably I'll speak for myself maybe then. To start the conversation, maybe to start covering women's football. And somewhere down the line that has also boosted us young women journalists to be out there in the football industry. Probably also because the so-called male-dominated sport or male-dominated space that is there, and there are very fewer numbers among the storytellers in the women's field. So thanks to you, Arko, or the likes of you, who are very few, but kind of make the space safer for us and also gives us the pathway to cover and share our side of the story, or probably do it in the way we would like to do it.
No, 100%. That's true. I mean, I think even when I started off covering women's football, I think it was Orko I turned to and asked for help, and he very graciously helped. So yes, I mean, it is down to him beginning the women's football conversation in the country.
Actually, I doubt it was me. Probably there were some guys before me, but I just made the most noise about it, to be very honest. I just made an effort to go cover the women's game wherever it was possible. Either it was Mewat or Ludhiana or, Shillong or Delhi, wherever it was. I just made an effort simply because I do it for the men's game also. So why not do it for the women's game? I mean, what is the difference? Apart from one small WO, is there a difference? No, I don't think there's a difference. The women's game has superstars in their own right, who deserve to be seen as individuals and not part of a larger collective, who've made the likes of Bem Devi have dedicated their lives to the game, and for 16 years without any coverage of the likes that are there now. They've selflessly given their their lives to the sport. So I mean, the real thanks should really go to these guys for keeping both the standard and the enthusiasm high at a time where it would have been very easy to get discouraged, right? Especially in the 2000s and early 2010s, So yeah, I mean, the fact that they kept the flame burning, even if it was a small flame, they kept it burning for future generations to follow. I mean, made easier for the likes of Bala and others too. So really, it should go to the generation that came before this one, generation of players. Either it could be a Sujata Kar or a Tababi Devi or a Mandakini Devi, or a Bem Devi. Any of these guys, all of these guys, they really hats off to them. And I look forward to sharing more stories, on upcoming pods about little nuggets about women's football that I picked up from time to time. And it's interesting because obviously the men's game is very well documented. But even when I'd gone to FC Goa, I saw that, Goan women had a rich history of football, but not very well documented. So my only job in this whole process was a tiny one. It was just to start the process of documentation, right? And thank you, Abreshmina and Siju, for taking the conversation forward. I hope to support as much as I can in this.
Well, absolutely. And like I said, it was definitely an acknowledgement for all the efforts and all of that. And rightly so. I mean, just to plug in, maybe it's a shameless plug in, but the show is called the Totally Indian Football Show. It doesn't say men's or women's. So it would be my responsibility, it would be my team's responsibility, our responsibility to continue the conversation and talk about the game and talk about what is missing and what is lacking. At least that way people are aware of what's happening in the circuit. Once again, thank you so much from our side to both of you guys, and we look forward to having Abreshmina more often and having this conversation around women's football as well. Now that's that, guys. Thank you so much to all our listeners for tuning in and for being patient. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, do show us the acknowledgement by liking and sharing our podcast, which is available on audio platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and it's also available on the Humans of Indian Football YouTube channel. Do tune in, like, comment, whatever you want to say. Do share your thoughts with us, and thank you so much. Have a great week ahead.